They called it a fresh start, a place where neighbors waved hello and kids played in cul-de-sacs. But what didn't they tell me? This neighborhood had rules. Rules written in ink and enforced in blood. That morning they came for me, not the police, not the FBI, the HOA. Overgrown grass? A truck parked too long in my own driveway? 50, 0 in fines. But here's what Karen Whitmore didn't know. I owned the only road into this neighborhood, and they just declared war on the wrong man. After my wife passed, this house was all I had left. Every brick, every blade of grasset was ours. But the HOA saw it differently. To them, I wasn't a grieving widower. It was a problem to erase. They took Daisy, locked her in a van for neighborhood safety. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. This was about power, and I was done playing nice. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and please don't forget to subscribe. And stay tuned, because what happened next? Let's just say Karen Whitmore never saw it coming. I'm Walter Grady, the black man, a retired engineer, a widower, and for the longest time, I thought I'd seen it all. I spent decades designing bridges and roads, solving problems, and building connections literally and figuratively, but nothing prepared me for what I was about to face in this neighborhood. After my wife passed away, I needed a fresh start. The memories in our old home were too much to bear. So I packed up my life and moved here to what I thought would be a quiet, peaceful neighborhood where I could heal and start over. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar to meet, it was my sanctuary. Every corner held the promise of peace. Every blade of grass felt like a fresh beginning. But little did I know that peace would be shattered by the very people meant to uphold it, the HOA. It started small at first warnings about my lawn not being green enough or my trash cans being left out too long after pickup day. I thought, okay, fair enough. I figured these were just minor inconveniences that came with living in an HOA community. But then came the fines for things that didn't even make sense, parking my truck in my own driveway, not trimming my hedges to their exact specifications. Before I knew it, those fines ballooned to 50, 0. Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, was relentless. She seemed determined to make an example out of me, as if punishing me would somehow prove her authority over everyone else in the neighborhood. Karen's voice echoes over footage of her speaking at an HOA meeting. We cannot allow violations like this to go unchecked. Rules are rules. At first, I tried reasoning with them. I explained that my truck was parked there because it didn't fit in my garage. I showed them receipts for lawn care services, proving that my grass was being maintained. But none of it mattered. They weren't interested in solutions. They wanted control. It became clear that this wasn't about keeping up appearances or maintaining community standards. It was about power. And Karen Whitmore wielded that power like a weapon. I couldn't take it anymore. The fines, the harassment, the constant feeling that I was being watched every second of every day. So I started digging through every document I had about this property deeds, contracts, anything that might give me some leverage against them. And that's when it hit me. I owned the only road leading into this neighborhood. Years ago, when I bought this property, I didn't think much about that little detail, and the deed the road access clause seemed insignificant at the time. But now, it was about to become my greatest weapon. Inside, a black SUV parked across the street. Two men in uniform step out, clipboard in hand, and begin inspecting my property. I watched from my porch, my expression a mix of confusion and irritation. At first, I thought they were just doing their job checking on the neighborhood, making sure everything was in order. But then I noticed something strange. They weren't just looking at my yard. They were taking pictures of my windows, my driveway, even Daisy's doghouse. I was holding another HOA letter. This time the fine is 500 for unauthorized modifications to his property. I slammed the letter onto the table. That's when I realized this wasn't about keeping up appearances or enforcing rules. This was personal. Karen Whitmore had made me her target. It wasn't long before things escalated. They started sending security guards to patrol my property. Imagine that, security guards, as if I was some kind of criminal. But the worst came one afternoon when I was out running errands. I came home to find Daisy missing. Her leash was still tied to the porch, but she was gone. I searched everywhere up and down the street, knocking on neighbors' doors. Then I saw it, a white van parked near the HOA office with a small crate in the back. And there she was, me Daisy, locked inside like some kind of prisoner. I confronted the guards near the van, shouting, "What gives you the right to take my dog?" The guards looked uncomfortable but refused to answer. They claimed it was for neighborhood safety. Safety? From what? A 10-year-old golden retriever who wouldn't hurt a fly. That's when I knew they weren't just trying to find me into submission. They were trying to break me. I knew I couldn't let them win it like this. So I started digging. Every violation notice, every letter they sent me, I read them all, front to back. And then I went deeper, into property records, HOA bylaws, and state laws protecting homeowners like me. It wasn't easy. Those documents are written in a way that makes them almost impossible for regular people to understand. But I wasn't about to give up when they had taken so much from me already. I had a meeting with a lawyer in a small office. The lawyer nods as I hand over a copy of my property deed. That's when I found it the deed confirming my ownership of the road leading into the neighborhood. It had been part of the original property purchase years ago, but I'd never thought much about it until now. That road wasn't just asphalt, it was leveraged. And if Karen Whitmore wanted to play hardball, well, two could play that game. I decided to stand at the entrance of the neighborhood early one morning. I hammers a sign into the ground that reads, "Private property, no trespassing." A neighbor pulls up in their car and stops abruptly when they see it. "Neighbor, what's going on here?" I answered. "Just exercising my rights as a property owner." It didn't take long for word to spread. Suddenly, everyone in the neighborhood realized that their access depended on Meath guy they'd been ignoring or siding against all this time. Karen Whitmore stormed into an emergency HOA meeting, her face flushed with anger. Karen, slamming her gavel. "This is unacceptable. We need immediate action." But there was nothing they could do not without my permission anyway. And let me tell you, watching Karen squirm like that, it felt good. For weeks, the neighborhood came to a standstill. Cars couldn't get in or out without my permission. Deliveries were delayed, school buses rerouted, it was chaos. And all of it led back to one person. Karen Whitmore. "Karen, this is unacceptable. We need to take legal action immediately." They tried everything, threatening me with lawsuits, sending more letters, even calling the police. But here's the thing. I wasn't breaking any laws. I was simply exercising my rights as a property owner. Eventually, they had no choice but to back down. Karen called me personally, something I never thought would happen, and begged me to reopen the road. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the living room with Daisy by my side, my phone rang, and I answered. "Karen, Mr. Grady, we'd like to discuss a resolution that works for everyone." I responded, "You mean you'd like to drop all those ridiculous fines and leave me alone? Because that's the only resolution I'm interested in." But this wasn't just about Mate, it was about exposing their abuse of power. By standing up for myself, I showed everyone in this community that they didn't have to live in fear of the HOA. This experience taught me something important. Knowledge is power. They tried to bully me because they thought I didn't know my rights. But when you take the time to learn, when you stand your ground and refuse to be intimidated, you can make real change. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I felt like giving up, when I wondered if it was worth all the stress and frustration. But then I'd think about my wife, about how she always believed in doing what's right, no matter how hard it might be. She would have been proud of me for standing up not just for myself, but for everyone who's ever been mistreated by people in power. My story is just one of many. Across the country, countless homeowners are being exploited by HOAs that have forgotten their purpose to serve their communities. It doesn't have to be this way. If you're dealing with an overreaching HOA, know your rights, speak up. And if you can't do it alone, find others who will stand with you. This road isn't just asphalt, it's a symbol of resilience and justice. And as long as I own it, no one will take that away from me. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that community isn't about rules or fine-sits, about people coming together, supporting each other, and doing what's right. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Knowledge is power. When I first moved into this neighborhood, I had no idea what I was up against. I thought I could trust the HOA to act fairly and in the best interests of the community. But I learned the hard way that sometimes those in power abuse it. But here's the good news. You don't have to take it lying down. If you're dealing with an overreaching HOA or any authority that's trying to take advantage of, you know your rights. Educate yourself. Consult a lawyer if you need to. And don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. There are resources out there, people who can help you navigate the system and fight back. You're not alone in this. We have to hold these organizations accountable. HOAs were created to serve us, not the other way around. And when they forget that, it's up to us to remind them. This road isn't just a piece of land. It's a symbol of resilience and justice. It represents every homeowner who's ever been told they don't matter. Every person who's ever been bullied into silence by people in power. For me, this road is more than asphalt and concrete's my legacy. It's proof that when you stand your ground and refuse to back down, you can make a difference not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. In the end, what matters most isn't rules or regulations, it's community. It's people coming together, supporting each other, and standing up for what's right. Thank you for watching my story. If it inspired you or gave you hope, share it with someone who might need it. And remember, no matter how big or powerful your opponent may seem, you have more strength than you realize.